Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and this is a small disclaimer for a couple of things at the beginning of the video here. And I had a script for this video that, as I was recording, I sort of threw away, right? I had like loose points that I wanted to talk about, and then I threw it away to sort of go more opinion based. Initially, I was like, oh, I have all these facts that I want to talk about and all this stuff. My reasoning for why I think this is going to happen or this is going to happen. And then as I was recording it, you'll probably notice where it changes. But as I was recording it, I sort of just tossed away and started just letting my feelings riff. So yeah, there's that, which will happen. So if someone makes a comment of this isn't like, factually based or anything like that, you're right. I eventually lose like the plot of wanting to provide evidence and stuff like that and move more into my opinion. So this is an opinion video. And then to sort of go back a little bit more, spoilers for Campaign 3 of Critical Role, which I never once said. So, potential spoilers for Campaign 3 of Critical Role. So realistically, spoilers. Spoilers. Anyway, now the video is going to start properly and you're going to hear me intro again. So, yeah, see you guys in 2 seconds. Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we're going to be talking about something that's been making its way around the internet quite a lot for a little while now, and I just haven't really had a full video dedicated to talking about it, and that is Matt going to destroy Exandria at the end of Campaign 3? So this theory has been around for a while. I think the first time I ever saw this theory prop up was the first time we learned that there was some sort of god eater going about in the world of Exandria somewhere. Like the idea of a god eater was first introduced, and this immediately sprung up a handful of conversation of the world might end if the gods are killed off somehow. So it's been around for a while. I would say like the early 30 episodes ish is when we initially learned about the initial ideas of Predathos, and then from there on, it sort of was just there. But then the whole OGL thing or OLG thing, I forget which way it goes, with WotC happened, where they had like, they wanted people to start paying them money for using their licenses and stuff like that. And that whole thing happened, which sort of pushed the idea of Critical Role moving away from D&D, and thus Matt would have to like destroy Exandria to like fully move Critical Role on from D&D and then move on to something else, and then would be later compounded onto by the fact that they would make their own tabletop RPG in Daggerheart. So this stuff all combined sort of put the idea out there that Exandria and, just Critical Role in general as it stands and D&D in Critical Role would be gone, and they would shortly turn into Daggerheart. And the way that they're going to make it Daggerheart is they're going to destroy Exandria. It's going to somehow be reshaped into the Daggerheart world. And while I see a lot of people's points on that, there are a couple things that I want to talk about because I'm not a terribly big fan of this idea in general. I could possibly see it happen, but there's a few things that have sort of been said recently and just a couple of ideas that I want to throw out there in, just in general as to why I don't think this is going to happen. And I also want to talk about like story reasons as to why it shouldn't happen. Story reasons, in my opinion, are more important because I believe the story will influence the real life actions that Critical Role takes. So I kind of want to just talk about that today. So first I kind of want to talk about the real world stuff, the real world reasons as to why Critical Role might not want to destroy Exandria and move away from D&D completely. Now, the first thing is Critical Role has a working relationship with WotC. They have a working relationship with Wizards of the Coast and technically Hasbro by extension. And for them to sort of just throw D&D away from their company, like to remove D&D from the Critical Role company and brand, would kind of be a massive hit for them. I don't really want to talk like money or anything like that, but they do have a working relationship. Critical Role has put out, I think, 2 books with them as of right now, and very recently, if you don't, if you want to keep questioning the fact that they have like a working relationship with them or not, Matt Mercer just voiced Vecna in Dead by Daylight, which is clearly something orchestrated by WotC and Wizard of the Coast, like the sort of crossover with D&D and Dead by Daylight was orchestrated by them, and I would have no doubt in my mind that WotC said, hey, here's Matt Mercer, who loves Vecna and D&D and all that sort of stuff. He's a great voice actor. You should pick him for the role. Now, of course, Matt could obviously get that role by himself, no problem, but I do think that there is a good chance that WotC would pointed them in that direction for Matt Mercer to play Vecna. So, to question if they have a working relationship when there's been tons of sponsors between the two of them, on Critical Role, they've worked together in multiple different facets. There is a working relationship here, and that I think is enough to say that they won't completely throw out playing D&D on Critical Role at all. Even with Daggerheart being a thing now, I still think they're going to be working together with WotC for years to come. So in my opinion, the working relationship between WotC and Critical Role should be enough to sort of make people question like, oh wait, they're probably not going to get rid of D&D as a part of the Critical Role brand. But then at San Diego Comic-Con this year, someone asked about like the future of Daggerheart and Critical Role, and the response was really good, and I honestly am just going to play it for you right here.
My question is, since Daggerheart is on track for being released next year, I'm curious if there's a possible plan of having a campaign with that system.
Ooh.
Yeah, great question. I mean, yeah, you will for sure be seeing us playing lots of Daggerheart. You will continue to see us playing other systems, including Dungeons and Dragons as well. We love to explore new systems, not just ones that we make at Darrington Press, but also ones that are made by all the other incredible, talented game creators and designers out there. So, yeah, lots of fun stuff coming down the pipeline. Do you want to elaborate?
So as you heard in that clip, they're going to keep playing Daggerheart, they're going to keep playing D&D, they're going to play other sort of game systems. Like, they've already experimented with other game systems throughout the years of, you know, them playing Critical Role, doing one-shots and stuff like that. So I imagine a lot of that is going to just, you know, stick around. They've also been messing around with, like, Candelabra Obscura, right? So there's a ton of stuff that I imagine they're going to do. And I imagine, like, they might, like, start splitting it up more, maybe doing, like, 2 Critical Role sessions a month and, like, 2 Daggerhearts and then a Candelabra Obscura or something like that. I would imagine, like, after Campaign 3 ends, we're going to go into more of a more open, like, because it's going to be year 10, right? Or even by then, maybe even, like, year 11, where they're going to start, like, opening up and branching off into new stuff and doing multiple different things with multiple campaigns going on at once, which I could easily see happening. So realistically, the idea that they're going to destroy Exandria and destroy, like, the current climate of Critical Role to, you know, move forward with Daggerheart doesn't, first of all, doesn't sit well with me, the idea of that, because there's still so much to do in Exandria, but at the same time, they're still going to be playing D&D, so why would they get rid of Exandria and, you know, remove this amazing world that they've built and just move on to something else? It realistically doesn't make any sense. So the idea in real life doesn't make sense. But now I want to talk about, like, the story reasons as to why I don't think they're going to be erasing Exandria, which I think the story reasons are way more important than, like, the real life stuff as to why Exandria and D&D as in general is going to stick around for Critical Role. So the first, like, story reason, I guess, I don't want to say story, I want to say, like, in-world, like, Exandria reason. It would mean that everything that's happened up in the last, like, 9 years, coming into 10 years, would be absolutely worthless. If they were to just destroy the world that we're currently enjoying and watching, filled with a bunch of characters that we all love and enjoy, villains, heroes, NPCs, side characters, characters within backstories, locations, magical items, creatures, animals, you know, all this stuff, all these things that we've grown to love and enjoy over the last couple of years, 9 whole years, right? And by the time, you know, they're ready to, like, move on to, like, Daggerheart or start using more Daggerheart, it'll be next year. So it'll be 10 years of all of this stuff, of these characters. Vox Machina, the Mighty Nine, Bell's Hells, Darrington Brigade, the Ring of Brass, you know, even if you don't like the Crown Keepers are there as well. The gods of Exandria that we just saw in Downfall. All of these characters, all of these groups, and the people they've interacted with over the last 9 years are things that have been shown to us and things that we have each individually, you know, fallen in love with or enjoy a lot or, you know, whatever. To destroy that, to get rid of that, would be a massive punch to the gut of the community. To erase all of these characters, specifically for me, if you were to erase the Mighty Nine, I wouldn't be, like, if you were to just remove the Mighty Nine from anything Critical Role related, I wouldn't be sitting here recording this video right now. The Mighty Nine got me into Critical Role. Vox Machina didn't do it. For me, it was Mighty Nine. So if you were to remove that at all, if you were to remove any of it, I probably wouldn't be here because I enjoyed all of it so much. But to just erase that, to remove this from the history, to just act as if it never happened and then move on to, like, a recreated version of Exandria to play Daggerheart in would probably piss me off. It would make me angry to know that this world used to be something that I loved for the last X amount of years of my life. For me, it wasn't 9 years. I wasn't around for the entirety of it, but I've been watching Critical Role for the last 4 or 5 years now, just as is, right? Since Mighty Nine. So for me, for them to erase it all would be a massive punch to my gut, and I know a lot of other people feel the same way, especially if you've started in Campaign 3, right? You've started in Campaign 3, you've caught up to Campaign 3, and you've started to make the effort to watch the other stuff, and then by the end of Campaign 3, everything that you've done has been worthless because they've destroyed the world. That, to me, is a terrible idea. And like I said, it would erase characters that we enjoy, erase locations that we enjoy, to erase the world and the lore and everything like that. I have 3 books sitting over there in my book collection for D&D that would be, well, realistically worthless. To erase that lore, to erase everything that's sort of in those books would be terrible. There's a Amazon Prime TV show coming out that I really enjoy and I like. So to erase the stuff that's based on would hurt me, right? So this idea of them erasing the world and getting rid of it would be a terrible thing because it means the story that we've been watching up to this point is worthless. It means that everything that we've seen up until this point, and it would mean that everything specifically that the Mighty Nine and Vox Machina did was pointless because at the end of the day it didn't matter because now everything is gone. The Bell's Hells would still be considered important because they would be the ones to have failed in this instance, and they were the ones who got the world to be changed and messed up. But for that to happen, for a lot of people's least favorite group to have the biggest impact on the world, which they're likely going to have the biggest impact on the world anyway, whether they save the gods, they have the gods killed off, or they force the gods to leave, or if they, if Predathos is released, and so many other things that happen within, Campaign 3, they're likely still going to end up being the most important. But if the world is destroyed, they're the only ones who are important. Whereas if the world is saved, the other 2 groups are still very much important to the overall landscape of the world. So the storytelling aspects of destroying the world that they're in is terrible. And I think it would just cheapen everything that's happened before. And with this group of storytellers who sit around this table and play Dungeons and Dragons, I guarantee you they've already thought of that. The idea that a lot of people thought about this means they've probably thought about it, and they probably also don't necessarily think it's a great idea. One of the biggest things that you see all the time is comic books, specifically Marvel and DC, how often they reboot their worlds, and a lot of people, get kind of irritated by it. Whereas, and they've started to realize it recently within comic book landscapes that you can just go to a different universe as opposed to erasing the one that's, being shown. So for them to do a comic book thing and erase the universe as opposed to just doing a different thing, instead of having Daggerheart and Critical and Exandria be 2 separate things, to erase the one to make way for the other would be a terrible idea. For story reasons, real world reasons, it doesn't matter. I truly think to do that would be a bad thing. I have friends, many friends, who read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and if you're not caught up with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I recommend you skip ahead a little bit. I'm not a big fan of JoJo, but I know of it and I know what's happened. And in, I think it's part 7. I don't know which part they're in now, but in one of them, they effectively reboot the world. And all of my friends who say they enjoyed parts 1 through 7 cannot stand anything that's come afterwards because it's no longer in a world they care about. It's no longer with characters they care about. They're revamped, changed versions of the characters that they used to like and enjoy. So for them, this sort of reboot and change to a world has been a very negative thing. And I imagine the same thing would happen here. So I kind of want to talk about one more thing before moving on. And that's sort of a personal attachment to things. What is the tagline for Critical Role? We are a bunch of nerdy voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons. That is the tagline they've been saying for 9 years. And Dungeons and Dragons is what pulled a bunch of people to Critical Role. Yes, the voice actors is nice, and a lot of people will say Critical Role sort of amplified Dungeons and Dragons. And while I agree, I also think Dungeons and Dragons amplified Critical Role. I think the 2 of them worked together to sort of become this massive thing. And over the last 10 years of, I think it's actually going to be 10 years in 2025, of 5th edition, the last 10 years of 5th edition, have been amazing. It's been like the biggest explosion of D&D for a very long time. And I do think a lot of that is and can be contributed to Critical Role, but I think again, Critical Role got boosted up by 5th edition being so user friendly, being so easy to get into. And Critical Role and D&D having this symbiotic relationship is important. It pulled me in. It brought me in. The fact that I wasn't playing enough D&D in college was the fact that I was like, you know what, I need more D&D in my life. So I started watching campaign 2 of Critical Role. So that is why I started watching, because I needed more D&D in my life. I wasn't playing enough. So the fact that there's this massive D&D show with not just one campaign going on, there's a campaign that happened beforehand. There's hours and hours and hours of Critical Role that I can watch, and it's D&D based. So for them to erase Exandria and erase D&D from Critical Role would be pushing people like me out. The reason I watch Critical Role, not just because I like the voice actors and their acting and their voices and their character work. That stuff is amazing and all fun. But another portion of why I watch it and why I'm so into it and why I enjoy it so much is because it's D&D. So for me, if you were to take that part out of it, take out the D&D, I have now lost about 40% of my enjoyment for the game. And I think can be the case for a lot of people. So there you have it. My opinion on the theory that Critical Role is going to be destroying Exandria / removing D&D from their scope, from their brand, from everything like that. And as you can see from this video, my opinion is no, I don't think it's a good idea. And I don't think they're going to do it because they've already said they're going to keep playing D&D. And it would be just a bad thing story-wise to erase everything they've built over the last 10 years. So I genuinely think that is enough to where we can say, like, they're not going to destroy the world. Are the gods going to be in the world? We don't know. That's the big question now. I genuinely think we can move on from Exandria being destroyed to what is Exandria going to look like. And I think that is a much more fascinating conversation. But anyway, I'm curious to know what you all think down in the comment section. I've had a couple of people talk about this in the comment section of, like, previous videos. So I am very curious as to what other people think about it. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and I will see you guys on Friday for the recap of, I think it's 104? It's either 103 or 104. But I'll see you guys then. Peace.